Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. For me, sunshine was always secure. I had previously worked night shifts. I still have nightmares about my 2-month stay at a Jacksonville motel, fast food, and petrol stations. Weirdos were supposed to work in those positions. However, Walmart, in the middle of the day, fucking during the day, elderly men bargain over fishing lures, while children sob in carts. I didn't imagine I would almost die there. In 2023, after I was priced out of Orlando, I relocated to Summerfield, Florida. It's a very quiet town, approximately an hour and a half north, with lots of new construction, retirees, and a Walmart mega store that essentially acts as the social center. The likelihood is that, if anything occurs in Summerfield, it will occur there. After a few challenging years, I needed a steady work, so I accepted the position at Walmart. After my previous relationship ended badly, I was left with no other options. Within 2 weeks of my cousin Megan letting me stay in her spare room, I was donning the blue vest and requesting that people inquire if they would want to sign up for a Walmart Plus membership. The job was something I detested. On the days when things weren't crazy, which were typically early in the week, it paid and seemed nearly bearable. I avoided the supervisors who want to coach you over a crooked shelf or a minute-long break, kept my head down, completed my shifts, and made friends with the regulars. On a Monday, which is the type of scorching Florida day, where the sun hits you like a hammer as soon as you step outside, it happened. The majority of my labor that morning was moving mulch sacks and assisting elderly women with loading petunias into their trunks at the outdoor garden center. It was about noon when I was moved inside. Thank God for assistance with groceries and recuperation. I recall feeling depleted, sunburned, and experiencing a headache behind my eyes. However, that day wasn't very noteworthy. First, no, I still find that frustrating. Nothing odd or out of the ordinary was present. Before it was too late, that is, it began with a man. At the beginning, he wasn't acting strangely. No shouting, no stealing. He was simply gone. I saw him for the first time while spacing out in a canned soup aisle. His long brown hair was greasy, as if he hadn't taken a shower in a week. And he was thin, most likely in his mid-40s. He had on a faded black t-shirt with an unidentifiable vintage band emblem and cargo shorts with strange dark patches on the hem. But it was his eyes that I remembered. Incredibly wide. There is too much white visible. He was blinking too little. He was merely looking down the aisle from where he stood at the end, just observing, not moving, not glancing at anything on the shelves. I thought he might be waiting on someone. After rearranging some soup labels and taking another look at my cart, I noticed that he was vanished. No big deal, I justified to myself. 20 minutes later, however, I spotted him once more. This time, I was standing next to the fruit, straightening bags of spinach in the open refrigerator, and he was standing in the same position by the bananas. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, his arms relaxed at his sides, and his chest risen and fell more quickly than it should have. I persuaded myself that he wasn't even looking at me, therefore I was just being too suspicious. But something I was tense inside. His silence, not his presence, was the cause. When someone is motionless in a constantly shifting environment, it seems strange. I went to grab additional stuff in the rear room. As I walked by the registers, I informed Heather, the front-end boss, "Hey, this man in produce is acting a little strange. Just a heads up." She hardly raised her handheld to look. Define strange. I was hesitant, just observing people, not trying to shop. Then Heather rolled her eyes. "Hey girl, it's Walmart. Welcome to the club." After that, everything got out of hand. About 40 minutes later, I heard someone yelling close to the deli as I was returning a misplaced basket of over-the-counter medications. It came suddenly and loudly, raw and more like pain than anger. I moved the cart forward so I could see it. Rotisserie birds were whirling at the hot bar, where a small crowd had assembled. On the floor was someone. It was the man. Like a seizure, he was writhing and arching off the ground in a violent, almost rhythmic manner. A woman standing too close was struck by his flailing arms. She let out a yell and staggered back, dropping her phone. A youngster gripped her leg, broad eyes. He halted after that. His body fell flat, as if a switch had been flipped. I thought someone would rush forward, a good Samaritan, perhaps, or a nurse. Everyone simply stood motionless instead. We were all, I believe, waiting for someone else to go first. Then he sat up quickly. It moves too quickly. A trickle of blood came from his mouth. His gaze wandered aimlessly, like an animal caught in a cage. They then focused on the shouted woman. He sprang forward. God forbid. I thought he was going to strike her. But he didn't. He sank his teeth into her neck. The commotion was immediate. Screaming. People dispersed everywhere. I recall how the small boy would yell high and harsh, and how someone would knock over a peanut butter jar display. I didn't think at all. All I did was run. With a pounding heart, I ducked into the back hallway behind the bakery. I kept going till I arrived at the break room, which was fortunately unoccupied. Grabbing the landline off the wall, I shook my hands and dialed 911. A man is assaulting people in Walmart. I took a gasp. He made a bite. I believe he is incorrect. There's something wrong about him. The dispatcher spoke calmly, too serene for the weird feeling. Has anyone been hurt? Yes. He gave a woman a bite. She had been bleeding. His mouth was filled with blood. Perhaps he is under the influence of narcotics. Perhaps there are officers on the way. Do not leave the line. But I was unable to. After dropping the phone, I ran away. It was worse by the time I arrived to the store's front. There was blood. Near the registers, a trail of it smudged the floor. They had pulled a security gate halfway down. Back behind the jewelry counter, someone was crying. I saw Heather squatting behind register 6 and attempting to gesture folks in the direction of the fire exit. She yelled, "Out," when she saw me. "Now get out. He's still inside." "Where is the woman he bit?" All Heather did was shake her head. Her expression was self-evident. I escorted two elderly ladies to the door. When we got close to the doors, I turned around and saw the man once more, but he wasn't by himself. Another individual was accompanying him. I somewhat recognized the young man. Worked evenings as a cashier, perhaps. His gait was identical to that of the first man. Earlier, head slanted, slow, jittery. He had red smears on his mouth. I will never forget the sound that came from the first man's mouth opening. A gurgling, guttural sound, as if something were stuck in his throat, instead of a phrase or a scream similar to an animal choking. I ran at that moment. It was a chaotic scene outside. People called loved ones and sobbed. Others were stunned and gazed at the skyscraper as if it were about to blow up. Within minutes, police were on the scene. Then local news, then EMS. With their firearms out, they entered. It was not the woman who had been bitten. The public was informed that she had been fatally injured in a brutal assault. The news put it like that. She had already gotten back up and attacked someone else by the time first responders arrived. Something they failed to mention. The film was not a zombie film. Actually, no. There were no hordes of undead emerging from graves, but whatever drug, breakdown, or illness affected that man first, it was becoming more widespread. The entire business was quickly cleaned out and secured. They assured the public that it was under control, but I could see as the officers exchanged glances, the way one of them trembled. They were frightened by something about it. It just didn't stack up. Walmart was shut down for 2 weeks. They said it was for sanitary reasons and refurbishment. It was never discussed in the town again. But I do recall the silence, the unexpected violence, the wide eyes. I can still hear that man's voice, if you can call it that, as he bit into someone like if he were going hungry. He tested positive for bath salts, they said. And it was a psychotic episode that wasn't communicable. However, similar incident occurred the next month with someone at the Dollar Tree 2 blocks away. Identical blood, identical eyes, the same scream. I also gave up, left the retail industry, and left Summerfield altogether. However, occasionally, on lengthy travels, I only stop at Walmart's to pick up some aspirin or a beverage. I keep my eyes peeled. I keep an eye on the shoppers, particularly those who remain motionless, blink insufficiently, or appear a bit too hungry, as I still think that some monsters emerge at night. But now I be aware of the reality. Don't rely on daylight. Not then, not in Walmart. And not in Florida. There is a real threat ready to strike. And not in Florida. There is a real threat ready to strike. I wasn't particularly ashamed of my life circumstances, but I also wasn't proud of it. Although working the nighttime shift at Walmart wasn't my ideal job, I was content with the fact that it paid enough to keep my bills on autopay, and that I was left alone during the day. I assumed that stocking shelves in the dead of night was as low drama as it got after years of switching between jobs, auto repair, factory labor, and even a brief, terrible spell in fast food. Also I believed. I had a husband at the time. Ellie was her name. We had spent nearly 15 years together. In retrospect, it seems like they married too quickly after meeting at a cookout. However, you begin to feel the strain when you're in your late 20s and all of your friends are having children and purchasing their first homes. Both of us were fed up with failed dates. You are aware of the types. Always searching for the next best thing, clinging one week and being detached the next. Despite our imperfections, Ellie and I were reliable. At least that's how we felt. We followed a straightforward routine. I put in nights at work. She spent her days at a local dentist's office. Around 5 p.m., we would briefly cross paths. When I woke up, she would be coming in. Most days, we had supper together and discussed the typical topics, including the strange people at Walmart and the kids at her workplace. Although we never had any serious arguments, there was always a tinge of unease. When she thought I wasn't looking, she laughed a little too loudly at her phone. On weekends, she would allegedly escape 4 hours to go thrifting or see her cousin. I don't feel jealous, no more. However, minor items began to accumulate, and then he was. Occasionally, she would hear the name of Brandon, a former partner. She claimed that after a few years of dating in her early 20s, they had moved in together and discussed getting married, but he departed to live off the grid in Colorado due to some strange spiritual issue. She once informed me, rolling her eyes, that money was bad, desired to live in a yacht or similar structure. Over the years, she may have brought him up 3 or 4 times, always in passing, as if it had never happened. And until the night I arrived home early, I didn't give it any attention. Maybe a week before Halloween. It was a Saturday. My manager, Trey, instructed me to clock out early on Saturday in order to make up for the double shift I had worked on Thursday night. I kept it from Ellie. I thought I would surprise her. On the way home, perhaps have takeaway. You know, do something on the spur of the moment. I parked on the street outside our townhouse just after 2 a.m. inside. There are no lights on. Silently, I crept in, wished to avoid waking her. I heard the flooring in the guest room creaking as I was halfway up the stairs. The door closed with a click. She didn't enter it. It served as storage for us. My stomach gave a nod. After waiting and counting to 30, I gently knocked on the door. No response. I called in a hushed voice. Ellie, are you all right? Quiet. I grabbed the knob. Locked. The guest room is locked. Why? With my heart racing fast, I asked. The door opened a couple of inches with a snap. Ellie protruded her head. Her cheeks was hot and her hair was a mess. You really frightened me, she hissed. At home. What are you doing? I said, looking beyond her into the dimly lit room. Got sent home early. Why is the guest room? When she said, I was organizing the old clothes in here. She became irate. Jesus, do you always have to assume the worst? I remained silent. She shut the door behind her as she left. She kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "Let's go to bed." She had icy lips. Things were after that. Nothing was the same. I had a dull aching behind my eyes every night before I left for work, as if I was stepping into a falsehood. I started losing my train of thought at Walmart, dropping boxes and misplacing pallets. My colleagues took note. I was written up by Trey. I didn't give a damn. Then the photo appeared. On Facebook, Ellie uploaded a picture. It's just a family photo. I saw that something wasn't quite right. Even though we were sitting on the couch with our cat on the armrest and her sipping a glass of wine, there was a human-sized mass appeared over the bottom of the couch beneath the blanket. It caught the cat's attention. The comments came pouring in. Under the blanket. Who is lying? Is that the head of someone? Upon closer inspection, it appears to be a face. My blood turned to ice. I displayed the comments to Ellie. "Oh my God. People are so bored." She chuckled. That simply I wasn't sure, but the cushions bunched up. I added a camera to my car a week later. My automobile, not the house. It had been relocated several times over the night. I had noted. Radio stations shifted. The seat moved back, but Ellie vowed fervently that she hadn't touched it. The following morning, I looked at the footage. I was stocking shelves in aisle 9 at 3:12 a.m. when a man got into my car. Slender, bald-headed, with vivid red beard stubble, leaning back in the chair. He retrieved a small folding razor from his jacket pocket and used it to shave the sides of his head. Then he rolled the window down halfway, smoked a cigarette, and sat there as if it were his car. 20 minutes later, he was gone. Ellie left the house immediately after him. Before he left down the street, she gave him a kiss. That night, I addressed her. "I caught a glimpse of him. I witnessed you kissing him. 4 years. You have been lying to me." She had a stony face. I said, "I want a divorce." She spoke without faltering. "If you fight me, I'll tell everyone you're abusive. So I'll take the house, the car, and everything else. Then, let's see how quickly you lose your Walmart job." That night, I didn't get any sleep. I chose not to call the police. I should have, I know. I'm sure that after reading this, some people will yell at the screen, wondering why I didn't call the police right away. However, how do you report to the police that your ex's long-lost boyfriend has been hiding in crawl spaces inside your home, areas, slinking into your vehicle, and resting beneath the cushions of your couch? I would be admitted somewhere. We needed a short break, so I brought the kids to my sister's house across town. I didn't even argue with my ex about it. She almost seemed relieved. Perhaps she believed that I had finally given up and was leaving without destroying everything. I wasn't leaving, though. I was getting ready. The house was deserted the day I returned. I didn't give her any warning or call her. I was aware that she and the kids were spending the weekend with her friends. After opening the garage and entering, I stood in the center of the living room. I called his name after that. "Jason, quiet. I am aware of your presence. I am aware that you have been here and that you have touched my property." Nothing has changed. However, I sensed him. The same feeling you get when you're on a dark street and someone is behind you. Feel rather than see. With my pistol in hand, I made my way to the hallway. Sweat slickened my fingers. Tibet was not visited by you. You didn't become enlightened by meditation. You hid as a parasite. You made yourself small, surviving on scraps and her. Then I heard it. Behind me, the tiniest creak could be heard in the floorboards. I turned around. The corridor was deserted, yet the gun was raised. I turned and shot into the door of the attic. A real human cry was heard, and then something heavy collapsed above me. After sprinting upstairs, I kicked open the attic door and ascended. He was still alive. Not quite yet. With his eyes wide and untamed like a crazy animal, Jason lay there in the dark, bleeding from his shoulder. His shaved scalp was sprouting the same red stubble. Around his neck are the same foolish monk beads. I told him not to take my place. You didn't want it at all. He spat blood and growled. You blamed her for everything while working and complaining. However, I was present. I was with her. I reared your children. I assisted them with their schoolwork and watched every game. They aren't my children." He fell silent. Then he chuckled. Not a crazy chuckle. A like he pied me, silent knowing one. At that time, I reported to the police that a squatter had broken into the attic and had been residing there 4 months or even years. He was happy and relaxed when they came to take him away, and my ex-wife played the part flawlessly, acting terrified and acting as though she didn't know, but I'd had enough. That same week, I battled for shared custody of the children and filed for divorce. I'm not sure if they belong to me. I'm not sure if it's important anymore. I relocated across the state, sold the house, and made a fresh start. Yes, I did spend many evenings alone. I sleep soundly now, although occasionally I'm in the pub, and other times I'm looking at the ceiling, wondering whether any of it was really real. Since I now know who was and isn't lurking behind the walls, at least anyhow. And isn't lurking behind the walls, at least anyhow. Although I didn't anticipate it, working at Walmart changed who I am. When I began, I was 22 years old, broke, and trying to save money for the tuition at a community college between semesters. Walmart was the first to contact me after I applied to a couple different locations. I dismissed my mother's warning that it would wear me down. I told her it's just retail, clocking out and folding clothing. They dressed me, primarily in the term women's basics, refers to clearance leggings and inexpensive bras. My closing shifts were from 2 o'clock to 11 p.m, cooked down in the store's back corner, close to the forgotten fitting rooms, 5 days a week. I didn't mind that it was silent and uninteresting. Walmart is different at night, which is something they don't mention at orientation. After 9:30, there's a strange silence that descends. The area seems to be underwater due to the intense fluorescent lighting. It all seems strange, a bit too clinical. The clients also become strangers. Ordinary people return home. Those who stay are either wandering or desperate. That was something I quickly discovered. It began as a coping strategy. I would smuggle one AirPod beneath my hair because the shifts were sluggish. I was frequently by myself in the department. Everyone did it, even though I knew it was against the rules. I turned down the volume so I could still hear approaching folks. I listened to just enough music to keep me calm as I repeatedly folded the same 5 tank tops. Instead of what actually occurred, I assumed that if management ever found me, I would receive a warning and possibly a write-up. It began like any other night. Thursdays are typically slow. After clocking in, I took out my price pistol and went through the women's clearance. I fixed half of the items that were still marked for last week's promotion. I hummed it to me. A gang of teenagers arrived at around 700 p.m, laughing loudly and flinging objects on the ground. I acted as though I was unaware. In 15 minutes, they departed. It was lifeless on the floor. By 8 p.m, the folding stool behind the fitting was where I sat, looking through the nightly task list at the room counter. Restore go-backs, fold tables, and clean out changing rooms. Every night, the same thing happens. I put my left AirPod in, covered it with my hair, and started playing music. Around 8:15, the first customer arrived. He was dressed in pants, a beat-up hoodie, and scuffed work boots, and he might have been in his late 30s, appeared as though they had just finished a shift. He had 5 things: pants, a windbreaker, and a few button-ups. His smile was courteous, but worn out. "Will you mind if I try these?" he inquired. "Of course," I replied, passing him a tag with the number 5 on it. "Every room is available. To let people know your door is occupied, simply hang this outside." He nodded and murmured, "Thanks," before entering the first stall on the left. I resumed folding. 10 minutes went by. I looked up to see another man standing by the counter, but I hadn't seen anyone else pass by. I winced. I hadn't even heard him. He was tall and pallid, possibly in his late 40s, despite the heat. She wore an oversized trench coat. His eyes were different from the rest of him, dripping and distracted, as if they were seeing through me. He whispered, "Can I get a room?" I answered, "Sure," and picked up a 10 tag. "We usually limit it to 10 items per person. Just so you know." He didn't answer, simply walked past me after carefully accepting the tag. Adjacent to the first man, He opened the second stall on the left. I thought that was strange right away. When there are unoccupied rooms, especially at night, most patrons tend to disengage. However, I remained silent. It wasn't strange, but hardly a crime. As soon as my favorite song started playing, I turned up the volume a bit. After 3 minutes, the man in the trench coat emerged quickly, as if he had a place to go. He unrolled all of his garments, twisted on the trolley next to me, half upside down. "Thank you," he muttered. "Have a blessed night." His pupils were dilated, and his eyes were big. In some way, his coat appeared heavier now. His hands were slightly red, but I assumed that might have been dye from a red sweater or something. He moved away without making eye contact. I felt sick to my stomach, but I remained silent. I was too preoccupied with whether or not I had dreamed it. I discovered the first stain as I began folding the clothes he had dropped. A tiny dark stain on a white t-shirt sleeve. It's distinct but almost dry. I took the shirt off. There was more. As I delved deeper, I saw heavier blood streaks and dabs. The final item, a pair of inexpensive polyester pants, was almost completely drenched. I went cold. I removed my AirPod. The silence was a shock. I became aware that I hadn't heard the first man emerge. His tag was still hanging on the door, even though he had entered long before the guy in the trench coat. Slowly, I entered the aisle of the dressing room. Outside the first stall, tag number 5 was still in place. From beneath the door, a thin line of blood ran down the middle of the aisle, bending toward the floor drain. I reached for the handle with a trembling hand. I opened the door a crack. The man was not entire, but he was still within. His bare body was slouched in the corner, his chest ripped open like uncooked meat. The only thing left of his face was ripped skin and bone. The whole corner was saturated with blood, splashing across the mirror and collecting in the tile fissures. It bore apparent finger streaks and a message scrawled in blood. "I did it because of the devil." With bile swelling in my throat, I staggered back, my ears ringing. Nothing came out of my mouth when I tried to shout. I remained motionless for a moment. I was unable to. Then instinct took over. I reached for the phone in the changing room and, with trembling fingers, dialed 911, the supercenter in Milton. There have been instances where someone has been harmed. Someone is dead, please. 8 minutes later, the police arrived. Later, I saw the blood seeping down the aisle for 8 minutes, while I stood outside the door trying not to throw up. Every sound made me jump for 8 minutes. They cordoned off the entire clothing department and closed the store. An hour later, the man in the trench coat was seen going barefoot to streets down, behind the gas station. The knife was still there and still covered in blood. He allegedly answered just, "The devil told me he was wearing sin," in response to their question about why he did it. I was dismissed, but I wasn't arrested. They didn't even hold off for a week. Along with HR and a security representative, the store manager summoned me into the office. They played a video of me wearing an AirPod. They claimed that by leaving, I had violated safety procedures. Be mindful. I refrained from arguing. They were hardly audible to me. I was only thinking about the first person, his kind demeanor, his weary smile, and the manner in which I gave him that he passed away while I was listening to music, and I treated it like any other night. I am frequently asked if I feel guilty. The truth, it's haunting me. Whenever I attempt to go asleep at night, I imagine that mirror, the words, his torn face, and the silence, just the buzz of lights overhead while a murder was taking place 10 feet away. I ask myself the same question again and over. Could I have prevented it if I hadn't been preoccupied? Could I have observed did the second person hear anything, the scuffle, the gasp, or else because he left earlier? Would I have frozen, run, or called for assistance? I'll never know. However, each time I shut my eyes, I see the blood, and all I can hear is quiet. I see the blood, and all I can hear is quiet. I shouldn't be discussing this. God knows that I've buried it behind memories, remorse, and what little decency I still had after that night for over 30 years. However, this world isn't for me anymore. The cough has worsened, and the trembling. The cold creeps in more quickly than before. I mean, my body no longer cares to fight it. What difference does it make if they come after me? Permit them. In the fall of 1992, I was 27 years old and totally broke. I was laid off from a tiny moving firm in western Kentucky. I believe the town was called Benton because was unable to pay my rent. While I was out searching for employment flyers, the landlord changed the locks. There was no family for me. After I stopped having a couch or a car to lend, friends quickly disappeared. The speed with which people forget you will surprise you. Just off Highway 68, directly across from the Dollar Tree and past the petrol station, was Wesley's Supercenter. It wasn't an actual Walmart, not really, but it was designed to resemble one. Same blinding white lights, same blue jackets, same hard-to-find stuff. Since the 1980s, it had been present. It served as a lifeline for the entire town. In a single trip, you could purchase diapers, motor oil, frozen meatloaf, shower curtains, and firearms. It turned become my last option. I initially merely went there to warm up. I would linger by the outdoor furniture or browse the book section, feigning to be waiting for someone. Unless you went along without making a purchase, nobody really paid attention. You become brazen, though, when your ribs begin to show and your stomach begins to make more noise than your lips. I began carrying packs of peanuts and granola bars in my pockets. A whole rotisserie chicken once. Avoided being discovered, at any rate. Not then. However, Wesley's was a peculiar location for reasons other than the robbery. It was the workers. They hardly stared you in the eye. Teenagers, elderly women, locals, and a few unhappy lifers who seemed to despise their jobs, but detested leaving them more made up the majority. However, some of them, how can I explain it? God, they didn't move correctly. They wore too clean uniforms. Unless they were spoken to, they never spoke. Additionally, their eyes did not meet their smiles. Only teeth. Greg is one man I recall. Tall, slender, golden hair that appeared to have been painted on. Regardless of the time you arrived, he consistently swept the same area of the floor pile 9 when working the evening shift. It made little difference if the floors were immaculate. He would mop, pause, and gaze at the tiles as if he were anticipating something scuttling out from beneath them. Even though it may sound odd, every night at 2:13 a.m. that's right, the water in that mop would turn red for a brief moment. I believed I was having hallucinations, possibly due to sleep deprivation, malnutrition, or some other cause. Then I met Eli, though. For the first time in weeks, Eli spoke to me in a humane manner. He was a black man, perhaps in his 40s, with a limp and a quiet voice. One night, I discovered him crawling into a closed dumpster behind the store, seemingly knowing just what he was looking for. He wore a scarf constructed from ripped Walmart bags and coats. "Are you hungry?" I was asked. "Like hell," I said. He threw me a pack of deli turkey that had been vacuum sealed. "They won't ever show you if you keep hovering around the front like that." "Show me what?" He bent quite closely. Wintertime rust was the fragrance of his breath. "The buffet." I chuckled. "You're cracked, man." I had the same thinking, but for the past 6 months, I've been eating well. No stealing or begging. All you need to do is know where to go. He informed me about below that evening. Is 9. Advised me to limit the number of questions I asked. Stated that I needed to demonstrate my ability to keep a secret if I truly wanted a chance at surviving the winter. "Okay," I replied. "I'm listening. Have you ever seen the janitor closet between the cars and toys?" "Yes. It has 2 doors. Some are bogus, and one is constantly locked. Only after midnight does it open out into a stairwell if you push hard enough. You fool. Pay attention to the red lights. Avoid talking to no one. Wait to eat until you are instructed to do so. Additionally, avoid looking in the bins at all costs." "Bins?" He didn't respond, simply left with a half-frozen smile. I ought to have left at that moment. A bus pass should have been stolen. On my way to the following town. Hell ought to have passed away quietly and anonymously in the woods, just like my uncle did. But reason is subordinated to hunger. So I waited the following evening, until closing time, hide between the clearance TVS and the Christmas trees. The store was not swept by the majority of the night workforce. I made my move at 12:11 a.m. as Eli had predicted. The closet door opened. The false panel was pushed aside, exposing concrete stairs with a red light bulb blinking at the bottom. The stench of bleach and something more made me pause at the top. Meat not the type you get at the deli. I numbered everyone as I went down 37 steps. The hallway at the bottom had metal walls with clear plastic strips hanging from them. As I walked, the temperature dropped. In front of me, my breath steamed. I made maybe 3 rounds before I came to a large room with rows of folding tables and low ceilings. Hunched over trays, men and women consumed heaps of ribs, soup, ground meat, and even desserts, all of which were steaming and fragrant. Nobody raised their heads. Nobody said anything. Then I noticed Eli waving at me from the far end. "Told you," he added as he shoved a tray toward me. "What is this?" I muttered. "Free meal," he said, "as long as you refrain from asking dumb questions." I slowly ate after picking up the fork. Gravy, potatoes, and meatloaf. It's all buttery, thick, and delicious. The unexpected warmth made my entire body tremble, until I spotted the bin. I was unable to stop. The kitchen station, one of those mobile plastic tubs used in dining establishments, was behind it. A man poured what appeared to be a foot in, opening the lid. Pale, human, still in a sock. I dropped the fork and gagged. Eli took a firm hold of my arm. "You failed to notice that. What the devil am I doing?" He continued. "You didn't see that. After consuming your meal, you leave. Unless you're prepared to be the meal, you never return." Without saying another thing, I walked away. Until I tasted blood, I staggered out of the closet, up the stairs, and puked in the parking lot. I didn't return to Wesley's Supercenter after that. During a shift change, Greg, the mop guy on the local news, disappeared, followed by a teenage cashier and the assistant manager a week later. Nothing was ever discovered by the police. Naturally, they didn't. They weren't searching under all 9. 33 years have passed. I currently reside behind a boarded-up gas station. Eli is forgotten. The Supercenter remains intact, still hiring and open. I occasionally spot the new drifters loitering with signs requesting change. I consider alerting them, but I choose not to. Why? Since a piece of me, the part of me that doesn't want to go hungry, is reminded of how delicious that lunch was. Never again. Of how delicious that lunch was. Never again. I never intended to be involved in something so sinister. My escape through photography was to capture light, emotion, and memories and turn them into something important. I have been working as a professional photographer for more than 10 years. My specialty was weddings, maternity photos, and graduations. However, quite a bit like artists attempting to make ends meet in a small town, I took on side jobs when money was tight, some of which were innocuous, like taking pictures of pets or products for Etsy. I even took some engagement photos with a Halloween theme at a pumpkin patch once. And then there was the ghost photography. That was just a strange little service I provided, since I was a paranormal enthusiast. It wasn't meant to be anything serious. Additionally, the notion of it seemed new to stage ghostly family photos. I even uploaded a couple instances online, done with style, of course. In the background are delicate overlays of ghosts created from old family photos, appearing to be keeping watch over the living. I was surprised by the response. Folks who were grieving, they would email me pictures of their loved ones, often scanned from faded albums, and ask me to place Nana in her beloved rocking chair or Dad by the hearth. I never made enough money to pay my expenses. Yes, it was morbid, but I convinced myself it was comforting to others. Additionally, I felt disgusted, as if I had been selling a false hope. I made a self-promise to quit as soon as I was able to secure a more stable job. Then everything changed when I met Kara Willis. A Facebook message timestamped at 12:47 a.m. was the first thing that happened. From a Kara W profile. "Hello, I saw your spirit photography advertisement. I'm interested. For a rush work. How much?" My stomach churned. It's never a good beginning, but my rent recently bounced and I needed a new alternator for my car. It depends. What's the rush? I answered. Are you able to finish it by Monday morning? I'll pay $600, much more than I'd ever charged. For a whole wedding photo shoot, I charge $250 each professional day. I paused. I ought not to have. Yes, forward the information. A minute later, her messages came pouring in. Not little ones. As I scrolled, I saw enormous walls of writing that blended together. She wrote about Meline, her 2-year-old daughter, who had died unexpectedly. No reason for death. Line after line about how she couldn't sleep, how much she missed her little baby, and how she wanted to remember her in a loving way, without mentioning the father. Then she suddenly changed her tone. I would like the pictures to be taken inside Walmart, close to the children's clothing department. Maddie enjoyed playing there. I wish I could be there with her favorite stuffed animal. Additionally, I want her spirit to be standing with me and holding my hand. Are you able to do that? I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. Walmart, of all places. The following Sunday morning, we got together at the 24-hour Walmart located off Briarwood Parkway. The weather was drizzling and dreary, with the kind of mild rain that chills you without soaking you. Already standing close to the sliding doors, Kara was shaking on her heels, as if she were under the influence of nerves, coffee, or both. She was no older than 30. Pale, thin, stringy brown hair pulled back in a tight bun. She appeared to have gone weeks without sleep. She said, "I'm Carrera," and before I could respond, she held out her hand. "Jess," I answered. "Are you certain you want to do this here?" She gave an enthusiastic nod. Maddie cherished this location. She referred to it as the large toy store. When I brought the bunny, she used to gallop up and down the aisles. It will feel natural, more authentic. She displayed a shabby plush rabbit with matted fur and one ear chewed. Her favorite was this. She used to say goodnight with a kiss. The greeter hardly looked up as we passed. Sunday mornings where this area of town is peaceful. It was almost deserted. "I'll need some pictures of you alone," I said. "Later, I can include Maddie. Do you have any photos of her?" Kara pulled and nodded. She took a Ziploc bag out of her handbag. 5 printed pictures were included. I looked through them. Most were low resolution, blurry phone photos. Maddie's smile was so big it filled her entire face, and she had blonde curls. According to Kara, she enjoyed the color green and dinosaurs. She detested wearing shoes. Verify that she's barefoot in the picture. All right. She gave the bag to me. With my camera ready and fluorescent lights humming softly overhead, I took up position next to the children's apparel area, cradling the toy rabbit like a baby. Kara moved to the middle of the aisle and stood. Then she started crying big, loud, theatrical sobs without my even asking. Behind the viewfinder, I froze. In between sobbing, she questioned, "Is this okay?" "Yeah," I responded clumsily. "Just hold still for a few photos." She held the bunny in the exact position she specified, gazing into space. She then knelt down and extended her hand toward the vacant area next to her. She muttered, "That's where she be." Verify that her head is slightly cocked. When she smiled, that was what she always did. I gave a silent nod and continued filming. She forced me to shoot more than 200 pictures, different viewpoints, tiny alterations, and the same position. I made an effort to walk swiftly and maintain my distance, but something didn't feel right. Her eyes had a strange intensity, as if she were performing or practicing, yet there was no grief there. She shook her head when I offered to walk her out when we were done. "I'll stay here a bit longer," she said. I must feel her presence once more. "You understand?" Even if I didn't, I still nodded. I loaded the SD card at home and began going through the pictures. For spirit images, I generally spend a day or two editing them, aligning the angles, harmonizing the light, and softening the edges. But for this one, I stayed up all night. I finished it by 3 in the morning. 5 clean pictures. In Walmart, Kara is kneeling and holding a bunny while a faint translucent child stands next to her. The child is barefoot, tilting their head and smiling slightly. I sent them an email. She answered right away. Excellent. Thank you. She has such a genuine appearance. You work like a magician. My account was credited. By 7 a.m. I assumed it was finished. No, it wasn't. I was editing some maternity pictures 2 days later when I heard a knock on my front door. Not a courteous knock. Banging. I looked through the peephole. 2 suit-clad males. The taller one asked, "Miss Jess Harding," while displaying a credential. "My name is Calloway, detective." "It's Detective Brent. We had some inquiries for you regarding a woman called Kara Willis." My stomach fell. "Is she a customer?" "Yes. I was hired for a photo shoot by her." "What sort of picture session?" "Ghost photography," I muttered. "Her daughter died," she said. "Desired a recollection." The detectives looked at each other. "Ma'am," Brent said, "Kara Willis is being investigated for her daughter Malin Willis's suspected murder. Her this morning. The body of the daughter was discovered in the dumpster behind that Walmart." The next few hours are mostly forgotten. I was taken in to be questioned. Took everything, including my phone, laptop, and camera. I repeatedly told them that I was unsure, that I believed the eye was only a photographer, and the child was already dead. However, Kara had already informed them that I knew her, and that we had organized the photos to help her cope with the loss. She gave the impression that I was complicit. Even worse, I was played something by the detectives. Walmart security footage from the day of the shoot. Carrera entered carrying the bunny by itself. However, she left the fire exit by herself once more at 10:41 a.m., which was around 15 minutes prior to our planned shoot time. She was holding a duffel bag, not a rabbit or shopping bags. The exterior dumpster was shown in the video. Identical timestamp. She dropped the bag inside after opening it. It was confirmed by the coroner. Malin had passed away a few hours prior. Smothering was the cause of death. No indication of a fight. I never received a charge. Not enough was found to link me to the offense. However, they held on to my equipment for almost half a year. My reputation was ruined. Clients abandoned me. Individuals muttered. Some thought I assisted her in fabricating her sadness. A few thought I assisted her in hiding the murder. It made no difference. I completely stopped accepting photographic jobs. I then relocated to a different area, found a job in retail, and made an effort to blend in. Still, I can't sleep at night because of one thing. That last picture she requested, she was on her knees, smiling down at her daughter's ghost, the one she was enamored with, while holding the bunny. I noticed something in the mirror of a freezer door behind her when I enlarged the original image, the modified one, but the unprocessed one straight from the camera. A child with blonde locks, bare feet, a tilted head, and no overlay, Photoshop, or transparency, standing and gazing up at her mother, as well as the timestamp. Malin didn't want to appear innocent 10 minutes after she should have been dead, even if it meant pretending to be grieving and dying. She wanted to take one final picture with her daughter. However, if it is accurate, then who did we bury? If it is accurate, then who did we bury? I never imagined that working for minimum wage would nearly kill me. Walmart was only meant to be a temporary job to help me pay for tuition, rent, and inexpensive groceries when I was a college student. I worked as a part-time associate in the nighttime stock crew at a Walmart in Millfield, a town along Highway 92, while also attending school full-time. Maybe, for such a little village. The Walmart was the only establishment open to 1000 p.m. and everyone knew each other's business. Some people made a joke about it being the town square. In contrast to a town square, nothing positive transpired in that structure after midnight. Certainly not in the back rooms, which is why I always detested it. I began at the age of 20, young, unsophisticated, and usually extremely exhausted. Work at night, attend classes in the morning, and work 4 or 5 shifts each week. I thought I could go through a semester without it, perhaps 2, but when you're too busy to think, time flies. A couple of people became my buddies. One of the few co-workers who could make me laugh when I was completely exhausted was Cassie, this gregarious gal from receiving. Jordan, a reserved electronics guy, was amiable and oddly adept at predicting when our covert shoppers would arrive. All of us relied on one another during those lengthy stints in the graveyard. Management was a different matter. Terry, our night manager, was a dictator who used clipboards, always threatening to reduce hours if we even breathed incorrectly, passive-aggressive. To maintain our jobs, most of us kept quiet. It was a crazy transition. People were fired or quit all the time. Someone's name tag might be in the break room in 1 week, while you're stocking shelves with them the next. They claimed to have discovered something better and moved away. However, there was always an odd feeling about those who disappeared in the middle of their shift. They drove out of the lot and opened lockers as if they had been intended to return. They simply didn't. It was an October Friday. The lot lights were buzzing like cicadas, and a chill had begun to creep into the air. That was supposed to be my off night. I was going to stay up late to finish my take-home midterm. But it was 6:38 p.m. Phone was buzzing. Terry was the one. Tonight, you are needed. Ashley failed to appear. Only you haven't worked more than 40 hours. I recall pondering whether or not to ignore the message for a full minute. But ultimately, I chose to do so. I required the hours. The rent was due. I replied with a text. Be there by 9. It was dark when I arrived at the store. Back then, Millfield's Walmart was open around the clock. There were perhaps 10 automobiles in the parking lot, largely belonging to employees, with a few sporadic customers. I met Cassie at the clock. You're an absolute saint, she whispered. Terry has been pacing erratically. I jokingly said, I want double salary. If he doesn't force you to face sweets aisles till the break of day, you'll be lucky. We chuckled, but it was forced and worn out. The night began slowly. Simple things like restocking Halloween sweets and resetting aisles. Cassie was employed in the rear. Jordan worked in electronics. I was on general merchandise, which included a variety of items, some clothes, toys, and household items. With the exception of the occasional cartwheel squeak or the echo of the PA system, everything was silent. Terry made the customary announcement at midnight. Walmart customers, take note. It is currently 12 a.m. while our store is still open. Some sections will be temporarily closed to restock. All questions should be sent to the front desk. Thank you, you. His voice was something I detested. Too polished, too fluid. A man was standing near the employee only doors when I went to get a cart from the back room at 12:41. Tall, elderly, balding, dressed in filthy pants and a green flannel jacket. He stood there as if he was waiting for someone. He should not have been back there. That's an employee-only area, sir. He grinned and turned slowly. I apologize, miss. I'm just trying to find the restroom. The restrooms are located near the registers. He didn't move, but he nodded. A few seconds longer than I should have. I maintained eye contact before turning and briskly making my way back to my aisle. He was merely a perplexed customer, I reminded myself, but there was something strange about him. I was radioed by Cassie 1 hour later. Does anyone happen to be in home and garden? No. Why? The motion light back there was tripped by someone. I found it strange. It might have been Terry. He's at work. I looked. After that, we didn't speak for a time, but I began to have that gut sense. The same one you get when someone is following you at night, or when you know you locked your apartment door, but it still opens. I continued to work. All I wanted was for the shift to be over. I then saw him once more at 19 a.m. Just standing there was the dude from earlier. This time in aisle 14. Seasonal products. He wasn't alone now, though. There was the second man was taller, younger, and had a black sweatshirt that covered most of his face. Neither had a cart. Both were empty, standing silently and gazing at the wall of plastic tombstones and faux pumpkins. Cassie, you near seasonal, I muttered into my walkie as I darted into the next aisle. Not at all. Why? There are 2 men back there who aren't shopping. It's strange. She hesitated. Hold on tight. I'll swing by. 5 minutes went by. When she arrived, they were gone. Are you certain you saw them? Earlier. I spoke with one by the rear room. He claimed to be searching for a restroom. Cassie scowled. He couldn't have made it that far without passing receiving. He would have been spotted by Jordan, unless he was from the rear. Her voice tightened as she said, "From the dock." We gazed at one another. It was illogical. The fire door alarm went off at the 3:07 a.m. close to garden and lawn. 7 a.m. close to garden and lawn. Who the hell opened it? Terry swore over the radio. Jordan reported that he did not see anything on the cameras. With his access card in hand, Terry barked commands at us over comms to get a look at every department. Claimed that it was most likely a punk attempting to leave with ATV. There was a metallic clank, and I heard it when I was among pets. When I turned the corner, I saw something worse than what I had initially assumed to be a cage or something falling. There was a crowbar next to the open, empty cage that housed the propane tanks outside. I felt sick to my stomach. Terry, I spoke into the radio. The latch on the propane cage is broken. It was forced open by someone. What is the number of missing tanks? Each and every one. Not moving. Then come get from me. I ran now. Jordan and Cassie were inside when I arrived. Terry was red-faced and pacing. He growled, "This isn't a damn joke. You three should begin exploring every inch of this store." I refuse to take responsibility if we are robbed. Cassie was about to speak when the ancient, unused PA microphone in the break room began to produce static, which caused us all to freeze. Because it was incorrectly connected and only played via the backroom speakers, no one touched it. The static ceased. Then there was a whisper. "The inventory is not complete." We did nothing but stand. I recall being chilly all over. "Who's playing pranks?" Terry shouted. Jordan, he appeared to have seen a ghost. "The primary PA isn't connected to that microphone. We disconnected it last year. I swear to God. Who in hell used it?" Then, nobody responded. Terry snatched up a flashlight and ran toward the rear corridors. Jordan and Cassie trailed behind. I remained behind. I have no idea why. Perhaps because I had a feeling that said, "Don't go back there." I observed something strange when I was waiting in the break room. The camera system in the back room was connected to the outdated monitor. It was turned on. The screen was flickering, but it hadn't worked in weeks. I saw it was playing something when I leaned in. Footage that is grainy. It has the appearance of a homemade DVD menu. Play file is the only choice. I wish to God that I hadn't clicked it. The night vision footage appeared on the screen. As associates walked down, someone was recording from the ceiling tiles. I knew who they were. Ashley, Jordan, Cassie, and the girl who allegedly didn't call tonight. Just a few hours ago, I even filmed myself stalking pillows. The video then changed. Ashley was in the back hallway, gagged, bound up, and crying. Steps, a dark silhouette. A wrench-wielding person approached her from behind. There was a horrible crunch, and then the screen went black. I fell backward and hit the trash container with a dry heave. My radio made a crackling sound. "We found something, Sally," Jordan stated in a tremulous, low voice. "Obtaining a freezer. Now you must return here." I took the walkie in my hands, trembling hands. The tape was just shown to me. "Stay out of there. Leave the store." No response. Cassie and Jordan, "Don't go in the freezer." Then, in an impossible way, I heard my own voice over the PA, a snippet from an earlier shift. "Hey, do you need assistance locating something?" Each time, it distorted more slowly. "Hey, do you need assistance locating something?" The shop went dark. I dashed toward the front, racing past half-open storeroom doors and overturned exhibits in the aisles. In aisle 9, I noticed Jordan's body lying face down with blood accumulating. I continued. Cassie was at the main doors, pulling them wildly. "They were secured," she said. "He locked us in. Terry has left. Next up is us." We used a fire extinguisher to smash the glass. 3 attempts were required. As we crawled out through the shards, alarms shrieked. We continued to sprint till we reached the Waffle House. Throughout the lot, made a police call, reported everything. Terry was never located. Ashley was never located. They claimed that an accident at work caused Jordan's death, that anything went wrong with the cameras. The tanks of propane were never got better. The following day, I gave up. change majors and cities. Cassie followed suit. Even though we don't communicate much anymore, I'm sure she remembers. When we finally meet, I can see it in her eyes. She appears to be haunted, as if her name was still being screamed through malfunctioning speakers. For my part, I get nauseated every time I pass a Walmart because I occasionally hear that voice again in my sleep. The inventory is not complete, and I question whether it ever was. They were banking on me, or if I was simply This wasn't always me. I had a car, a job, and a respectable apartment. I wasn't drowning, but I also wasn't prospering. Many believe that homelessness occurs suddenly. It doesn't. It drips slowly. One paycheck skipped, then another, a late rent, notice, a car breakdown, or a job that reduces your hours till further notice. Sleeping on a friend's couch for a week becomes a month. The patience of that friend runs out. You're hauling groceries upstairs one day, and next you're wondering which restroom at the gas station is the cleanest for brushing your teeth. However, I'm not sharing this out of sympathy. This is what I'm saying, because if you're reading this and you're as close to the brink as I was, you should know that the most dangerous thing you can do is to be by yourself. I almost died the only time I forgot that. It began in the suburbs of a city I'll call Faywood on a chilly Wednesday night in early December. Not Nevada, not Vegas, a place that is a little forgotten and peaceful. Like a beacon attracting the needy and the odd, a 24-hour Walmart sits on the outskirts of town. Although I hadn't been here long, I wasn't unfamiliar to the region. 2 weeks before, I slipped in after losing a job working landscaping into different counties. I reasoned that I could find day labor, camp behind the old railroad, and possibly earn some spare income by assisting Walmart customers with grocery loading. Not glamorous, but it's unusual to survive. I was more hungry than normal that night. I could sense my patient's hunger pangs, as my last substantial meal was a burrito from the petrol station 2 days prior. I would be lying if I claimed that I hadn't occasionally gazed at the shelves for too long, even if I wasn't a burglar. Nevertheless, I knew Danny, a Walmart night stalker who had been there long enough to lose interest in following company policies. If he was on shift, when no one was around, Dad would slip me deli sandwiches that had gone bad. The wind stung as I walked across the parking lot, pulling my tattered hoodie tighter. Aside from a few rusty vehicles and one idle sedan, it was almost deserted. The windows were foggy. At the time, I didn't give it much thought. With a moan, the automated doors opened. Heat poured forth. I entered the linoleum and fluorescent light. Danny yelled gently, "Yo, Bert," from behind a bleach pallet. Bert is not my name. People refer to me by that name. I no longer go by my given name. There are too many conditions. Are you hungry? Danny, do you have psychic abilities now? He threw a plastic chicken tender container at me, edible, although a little crusty. Like a prize, I caught it. Knowing when the manager is in the crapper is the only use for my clairvoyant abilities. Eat quickly during a 10-minute time frame at most. With a nod, I headed for the garden section. The benches remained peaceful and out of the way. Even though it was closed off, I spotted Angela at that moment. She sat curled up next to the fake plants, covered in a thin blanket, tapping her leg nervously, probably no older than 20. Although I had seen her previously, I had never had a conversation with her. Most street people find it difficult to trust one another. I paused. She gave me a short, embarrassed, and exhausted look before turning away. You can get rid of that kind of fatigue by sleeping. Hey, I murmured, you all right? She paused before responding. Do I appear okay? Equal, just to be sure. I sat across from her, giving her some space. After that, Angela remained silent. She simply gazed past me at something in the stockroom entrance's shadow. I followed her eyes. Nothing, just a typical nighttime shift mess. A cart full of clearance toys, mop buckets, and pallets covered in plastic, yet her eyes remained fixed as if she saw something I didn't. "Someone has been following me," she muttered. I was completely stopped by that. I turned to look behind me again, but we were alone. Danny had vanished from view. The only sounds coming from the front register were the sporadic beeps of a scanner and the monotonous hum of the ceiling lights. "Who?" Her response was, "I don't know. He doesn't appear to be homeless. He has on this dark sweatshirt. Follows me around town. 2 nights ago, I saw him outside the shelter. He only observes. He never gets close." A shiver went down my backbone. I had heard such tales. I'd lived them. Hell. It's just paranoia sometimes. "But do you ever tell anyone about it?" Angela laughed sourly. "Do you believe anyone is interested?" We sat in silence for a while. I completed the tenders. She remained silent for a moment. After a while, I got up. "See, I'll be here. Don't venture out alone, okay? Come find me if you see him again." She didn't argue, but she also didn't nod. I left her there and went back to look for Danny. That night, I never saw Angela leave the store. At some moment, she must have gotten away, as I was assisting an elderly man in loading water into his vehicle in exchange for a small payment. It wasn't until the following morning that I gave it any thought. Outside the Walmart, the police were parked. In the vicinity of the side loading dock, yellow tape flew. White-faced, Danny stood off to the side. "What took place?" I inquired. He continued in a sad voice. "They found a girl dead near the dumpster. Trauma caused by blunt force." Although the police aren't saying much, I was already acquainted with Angela. I knew the blanket was gone, even though they initially kept her identity a secret. The news report detailed her clothing, but did not show her face. She was the one. It was as if something had dug its claws into my chest. I informed the police about her remarks regarding the individual wearing the hoodie. I could see they didn't give my statement much thought, even though they thanked me for it. One more girl dead on the streets. One more nobody. The following night, I was up all night. Behind an ancient pharmacy, I discovered an alleyway with high walls and a single entrance. I held my blanket next to a metal rod. However, fear may do amusing things to the brain, causes shadows to appear everywhere, gives the impression that every step is dangerous. 3 days went by. I remained cautious yet alert, staying in the Walmart parking lot. When I saw him, I had the hope that I might be able to apprehend him, alert someone, and prevent the next one. Just after midnight, he stood at the edge of the property. The same fogged-up vehicle, with his hands in his pockets and the hood over his head, observing, but shopping while standing outside without entering. I moved in his direction, calmly, as if he were doing nothing wrong. He turned slowly. "Are you trying to find someone?" I asked, maintaining a steady tone of voice. He merely cocked his head, without replying. His gaze made me shiver for some reason. Predators are nice. There was no surprise or fear, only curiosity. When I said I'd leave, after grinning, he left as if he had never been there before. Vanished into the darkness next to the gas station. I didn't pay attention. I called the police once more and provided them with the car's make and partial license plate. They said they will investigate and thanked me once more. Within a week, Angela's passing was no longer in the headlines, but I was not. A few days later, I departed from Faywood. I was unable to stay, not after that. She's still on my mind. I continue to question whether I could have done more. Better warned her. Spend more time sitting with her. I can still see the eyes of that man in my dreams. He seemed to know and didn't stop him from smiling quietly. Thus, I am narrating this on a computer in a different town's library, hoping it reaches someone who needs it. I am hoping it finds someone who believes tonight is just another night and is afraid and alone. Because it may not be. Remain with your folks. Don't fall asleep by yourself. If something doesn't feel right, it most likely does. Out here, there are monsters. They don't reside in closets or beneath mattresses. They resemble everyone else and reside in parking lots, behind dumpsters, and in aisles stocked with cleaning goods. Otherwise, I left high school at the age of 17. I wasn't proud of the choice, but pride has to give way when your dirt breaks and your expenses keep mounting. My mother spent her evenings at my stepdad and the nursing home at bailed years ago. I couldn't just wait for things to improve. I so began taking every job I could find. I ended myself at Price Right, the only 24-hour store in that rural area. As a result, Mississippi, where at 3 in the morning you may buy shotgun ammunition, socks, or shampoo. There was no title for me. On paper, I was a utility associate, but in practice, I was everyone's fallback. If I filled in when someone called off, pallets would be unloaded in the back room one evening. Time seemed to drag on while I was working in the lonely men's area or cleaning up vomit in the restroom. The majority of shifts blended together. The same dusty air vents coughed into the ceiling tiles, the same fluorescent lights, the subdued tension of a night crew trying to avoid going crazy, save for that one night. It began like all the others, the night I still think about when I can't sleep, even after the sun had set. It was still very hot outside in late July. I had spent the last half of my double shift stationed in softline apparel. My boss, Becky, radioed in to tell me to count my drawer and begin closing down, as I was folding mountains of cheap pants that no one wanted. The time was little after 11:55 p.m. I recall that because I had just begun counting the register when I heard the far end sliding glass doors stutter open. Technically, we had locked them 5 minutes prior. I looked up, prepared when I spotted him. I wanted to shout something toward the front. He had the appearance of someone who had just run through the forest, arms scratched, shirt soaked, breathing heavily. He had wearing a soiled tank top that had previously extremely loose fitting, white sports shorts with holes pierced by cigarettes. His calves had dried muck all over them. He held onto a pair of jeans and a hoodie that was still hanging on hangers, their tags flapping like lifelines. "Yo!" He stomped up to the counter and barked. "I must purchase these immediately." I recoiled at the way his voice cracked. My stomach tightened as if it had already sensed that this man was trouble. "I apologize, sir. I'm going to shut the registration down. You must go to the front," he yelled. "I don't have time for that. I'm in urgent need of these." I hesitated, torn between the expression in his eyes and procedure. Like a pursued person, they were untamed, bloodshot, and intensely focused. I dealt with a good number of disgruntled clients. I've even had one vomit on my shoes. He wasn't twitchy, though. He was dangerous, perceptive, and keen. I peered down at the open drawer, which was filled with small stacks of uncounted, alluring banknotes. "All right," I answered, trying not to show my nervousness. $20. A crumpled dollar was tossed onto the counter by him. It had a slight swamp water odor and was wet. I said, "You're short 3, with caution." He merely gazed at me. With a sigh, I took some change out of my pocket. The fight wasn't worth it. Not on that particular evening. All I wanted to do was return home and forget about it. He immediately tore off the tags, pushed the jeans on over his shorts, and slipped the hoodie over his tank top. No hesitation, no privacy. Suddenly, he turned and dashed in the direction of the emergency exit. He was well gone by the time Becky walked waddling down the aisle from the back office, even though the door alarm had gone off. "How on earth was that?" With her mouth full of sunflower seeds, she inquired. I gave a shrug. "Just someone in a hurry." 10 minutes later, the entire plaza resembled a crime scene. Display. A helicopter spotlight sweeps the gravel lot beyond the waste compactor. Flashing lights, and policemen barging into businesses. After escorting us into the break room, two deputies displayed a picture, mugshot, and tattoo of an older white man with buzzed hair. His forearm had a twisted cross, and his eyes were really cruel. According to the tour officer, Richard Kellerman, escaped from Rainsford State Prison early this morning. He's regarded as being quite dangerous. The room's air was expelled. The tattoo instantly caught my attention. I held up my hand. He entered my register. They didn't squander time. In a matter of minutes, I was in the manager's office, viewing shaky black and white video showing me navigating the transaction with anxiety. The officers looked on silently. I held on to was thinking about the cash drawer had left open in front of him. He had the option to accept it. Might have caused me harm. However, he didn't. He ran, you said. The officer's eyes narrowed as he asked, yes, this is where it changed. Rushed out the fire exit. Slowly, he nodded. He must have assumed that wearing fresh clothes would ruin the aroma. That night, I didn't get any sleep. The sound of every creak in the house seemed like someone slinking toward the door. Half expecting to see that cross tattoo plastered against the glass, I kept scanning the back window. I saw the story on the news a few nights later. A patrol car's dash cam footage from outside the town. A man had been stopped by a deputy for acting suspiciously. The man claimed to be out for a run on a day that was 95. However, he was sweating and jogging along the highway at noon without a shirt. No phone, no ID. The officer released him. Incredulous, I gazed at the screen. He had the identical sweater knotted around his waist that I had rung up. Richard's voice sounded calm and smooth even with the distorted audio. Merely attempting to get in shape. There is nothing wrong with you, sir. He was never apprehended. Over the next few years, I relocated to 2 states. After earning my GED, I began working in a warehouse before transitioning into long-haul trucking. I also left that version of myself behind, along with price. However, I occasionally see someone in the mirror when I pull into one of those remote travel stations to fill up. A man with old scars on his arms and burnt skin, a shadow in the background, who vanishes as soon as I turn around. I'm not sure if it's really paranoia, but perhaps after all these Richard recalls me the same way I remember him after all these years. I only know that after you've looked you gave the murderer a receipt after meeting his eyes, and you continued to examine your shoulder. It used to seem dull to me to work overnight at a supercenter. Boring, but not frightening. I now have to look everywhere when I enter a Walmart. In grocery aisles, I have panic attacks. Flashbacks may be triggered by the beep of a scanner or the scent of cleaning solution. I haven't spoken to anyone from that employment in 3 years. I am unable to. I was 28 years old at the time, just divorced, and sharing a modest 2-bedroom apartment with my daughter in a little rural Kentucky town on the east side. The finances were tight. About 25 minutes from my house, I started working the night shift at a Walmart. The time frame was from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. 5 days a week. An hourly wage of $15.25 was paid. All in all, not terrible. The overnight stock crew was us. There are around 12 of us in total. 1 or 2 kids who are just out of high school, a few older men, and mostly ladies. Although the store was officially open around the clock at the time, there was hardly any foot activity to midnight except for truckers and odd customers who came in for supplies like bleach and duct tape. My work was easy. Stock shelves, unload freight pallets, and ensure that everything is tidy. It was simple on paper. However, the nights were long, silent, and frequently draining, and occasionally something felt off. However, I will address it. I'll begin at the beginning. It all happened on a Thursday night. We had a lot of work on Thursdays, so I recall. That shift, we had 3 trucks to unload. That night I was in a bad mood. I nearly called in when my daughter Katie woke up with a fever, but I needed the hours, so my ex-husband Travis agreed to stay with her till dawn. I parked in the rear parking and entered by the associate entrance after arriving at 9:50 p.m. Harold, the night manager, had already arrived at the clock-in station with his typical black coffee thermos. Grunting, "You're late," he said. "It's 9:52, I claimed. "The clock strikes 10 o'clock. Harold didn't respond. I was never liked by him, or, I believe, women in general. The remainder of the crew arrived gradually. Sarah, the kind elderly grocery worker, the high school boys Jorge and Matt worked with toys and dogs. Like me, Sherry was a single mother who covered household goods. One new girl that evening. She was first presented by Harold at the safety briefing. He said, "This is Lacey. She will assist with dry things. Rachel, Show her around. Fantastic. I had already fallen behind. Lacey remained silent. Her blonde hair was tangled, and she exuded a nervous aura, as if she were waiting for someone to approach her. I inquired as to whether she had prior retail experience. Not Walmart, she muttered. However, I spent some time stockpiling in Major overnight. Cool. I refrained from pressing. We divided into departments. I was working on packaged entrees, spaghetti, canned vegetables, and dry foods. Simple things. As I scanned products, Lacey trailed behind, cutting open boxes and placing them on shelves. Around 1:30 a.m., I became aware of the first thing. In the aisle next to ours was a man. At first, I only saw the edge of him. He was wearing pants, brown work boots, and a hoodie pulled over his head. He wasn't shopping, but that's the only oddity. He wasn't wearing stockings. He had no cart in his hands. He appeared to be reading each ingredient individually as he stood there facing the soup shelf. However, he remained still. I looked at Lacey. She didn't appear to be aware. I passed the aisle once more at 1:47 in the morning. He remained there. Harold was gone when I looked back a minute later, but I had mentally noted that I should bring it up to him. No cart, no footsteps, simply disappeared. Strange. It wasn't until shortly after 3 in the morning that I saw him again. I was by myself. I was replenishing cereal, and Lacey had taken her 15-minute break. He was standing once more, down by the freezer area. I had enough, I determined. Harold was radioed by me. Harold, hello. A man has been hanging around the frozen food for around 30 minutes. Just letting you know. No answer. I gave it another go. You copy, Harold. Not moving. Do you hear me? The sound of George's voice cracked. Yes, I get you, Rachel. Harold is in the dock at the back. I'll go see. Regards. The man was gone again as I turned around. He didn't seem like a client or even a person at this time, so I thought maybe he was simply a strange customer. Things quickly went to bad. A scream came from the garden center at 3:18 in the morning. Everybody froze. It's the scream that chills you to the bone. Was that Sherry? Lacey muttered. I let go of the box I was carrying and sprinted toward the direction of the noise. At night, the garden center was closed. No customers, locked doors. It was only accessible by staff who had keys. Upon arriving, I discovered Sherry sobbing uncontrollably while hunched in the corner among the mulch sacks. Sherry. Her eyes were wild and big as she gazed up. Here he was. He was with me in here. Who are the individual? The one wearing the sweatshirt. He entered the closed door without hesitation. Right through it. I glanced toward the door. It remained locked. No indication of a forced entry. Behind me, Matt and Jorge appeared. What happened? Matt inquired. The power went out before I could respond. Each and every suddenly, the store's light went out. There was silence, followed by a thud. From within the fortifications, we illuminated the path with our phones. After roughly 30 seconds, the emergency lights came on, flickering dimly. Once more, I radioed. Can you hear me, Harold? Nothing has changed. Jorge proceeded to inspect the fuse boxes in the stockroom. Sherry continued to tremble despite my attempts to soothe her. Then a voice crackled across the store intercom and speakers. It was familiar, slow, and jumbled. Rachel is my name. I went cold. Rachel is my name. I'm in the shop. I see everyone. Even though it wasn't my voice, it used my name before declaring, I'm not the one who's going to die tonight. Lacey let her phone fall. The group dispersed. Sherry bolted for the drugstore. Matt and Jorge head for the staff lounge. To get to the stockroom, I ran. I had to locate Harold. It smelled like blood inside. At first, I didn't notice Harold. He was slumped behind the cardboard barrier when I noticed him. He had his head cocked at an odd angle. He felt blood tug beneath him. I let out a yell. Someone seized me from behind. I struggled, kicking and scratching, until someone spoke. It's me, Rachel. Jorge is here. He drew me back. He is no longer alive. I muttered. Jorge became pale as he glanced across. We must dial 911, he said. I gave a nod. But inside a local Walmart, None of our phones got signal. No service, no bars. In the break room, we got back together. We were now 5 in number. Lacey, Sherry, Matt, Jorge, and I. The doors were locked. Lacey claimed to have seen the door mechanisms are being jammed by someone. Afterward, on the TV screen that is positioned in the corner, the feed from the security camera started to cycle. Footage taken throughout the store. Harold collapsed behind the BOR in one frame. Our group resides in the break room in another. The man in the hoodie then appeared on each screen, one after the other. He was simultaneously in 5 places: footwear, groceries, pharmacy, aisle 6, front door, same pose, same face hidden, motionless, observing, multiplying. We attempted to flee one by one, running for the cargo dock. Sherry did. She was captured on camera. Behind her, the man emerged. She let out a scream. The feed turned black. Matt left 4 toys after declaring he wasn't staying to die. I stayed with Jorge. We used vending machines to block the door. Shaking, Lacey sat in the corner. She stated, "This isn't just a person. I've seen it before. I quit Maya for that reason." There, the same thing took place. There were 3 fatalities. I gazed at her. "Why didn't you speak up? Did you think I was real?" She was right. Matt failed to show up. The cameras showed it to us. He reached the section on electronics. In an attempt to obtain a phone, he broke a display window. Behind him the man entered. This was the only time his face was shown. It was blackness, not a face, a gap. Matt yelled, turned, and disappeared. There was no blackout on the camera. He simply vanished. Just gone, no sound, as if he had never been there. We came up with our ultimate idea. Jorge would activate the alarm and head for the emergency fire exit. I would locate the security office and attempt to utilize the landline with Lacey. After holding hands, we parted ways. "See you outside," Jorge muttered. He didn't make it either. So I wish he hadn't said that. The alert was heard by us. The feed was then displayed. When Jorge reached the fire door and opened it, he discovered that the parking lot was gone. Nothing except blackness. Nothing. Screaming. He was drawn in. I discovered a monitor playing video of me as a kid, a teenager, and a mother in the security office. All playing, all recorded. How did they get this? I muttered. According to Lacey, they're not human. What are they? She didn't respond. Rather, she gasped as she glanced at the camera stream. "Where's your daughter tonight, Rachel?" My heart stopped beating. Although my daughter's room and my apartment were seen on the TV, I had left Katie with Travis, standing next to her bed. The man in the hoodie observed, "I don't recall getting away. We managed to get out. The sun was coming up, covered in blood and filth. We stumbled onto the lot. The police had already there. It was not us who had called. The store itself, perhaps. The thing inside, perhaps. They only discovered us no blood, no bodies, and no video. We were also given the label of traumatized. A week later, Lacey was gone. Sherry registered for a facility on her own. The body of Jorge was never located. Matt's parents continued to believe that he fled. They claimed that Harold's death was due to natural causes. I am more knowledgeable. Katie is doing fine. She doesn't recall that night, but occasionally she wakes up yelling. She claims to have dreams about a faceless man wearing a hoodie. I gave up working in retail. Even though we relocated, I occasionally still see it. Not the man, his shadow in mirrors, cameras, and reflected glass. And I want you to go to a 24-hour Walmart by yourself after 3 a.m. and stand in aisle 6, where the canned soup is. If you believe this to be merely a narrative or a delusion from a mother who is sleep deprived, simply wait while standing. Your rook, standing by her closet, is a hoodie. Never speaks, never moves, simply observes. I've tried relocating, medicine, and therapy. Nothing is helpful. I sometimes question whether we actually left that Walmart. The realist never made it out. But sometimes I feel like we're still there, trapped in some kind of twisted loop, acting out the survival illusion. Since then, I have been unable to maintain employment. I currently homeschool Katie. I place my grocery orders online. It has been 3 years since I last visited a supercenter. In my sleep, though, I can still hear the scanner beeping. In my nightmares, I can still see that face, or rather, the absence of a face. Additionally, I occasionally see static flickering across the TV when I'm alone in the living room after a late night. Even when it is turned off, I am aware that it is waiting and watching me. Because you are remembered by stuff like that, you are marked by them. Therefore, don't dismiss someone standing motionless in an empty aisle if you're ever working the overnight shift. Don't seek assistance. Don't let it figure out your name, no matter what you do. No matter what you do.